Welcome to the Mighty Companions. I'm Reverend Glen Ganaway, Integral Mentor, and I am really pleased to be here with you. We're all the way up to episode 13. Have you been following along? I'm here as a way of facilitating this group and our time together as a way of implementing the non-dual ideas that A Course in Miracles has for us. We are working today with the first half of chapter 13. Let me go over a little bit about what this is. We are a group that is made a commitment to read the Course in Miracles in a year. I'm an integral mentor and an interfaith reverend. I live in Manhattan, and I have my ministry in Manhattan. I live in Brooklyn, and I use an interfaith perspective for A Course in Miracles because I think that all these different religious technologies, and that's kind of what interfaith means to me, all this interfaith, all these religious technologies are good ways of and methods. It's like what Ken Wilber calls a conveyor belt to bring us into this present moment. And this present moment is where we make good decisions, where we have the ability to love and accomplish what it is that we are here to do in this world. So if I'm able to use the ideas of A Course in Miracles and be able to maybe frame it in a way a Lakota might frame it, or to be able to give you a Hindu example, or to be able to use the ways in which the traditional Torah or Quran, or maybe the New Testament, or maybe the way Jesus said it, or maybe the way Rabindranath Tagore said it, then that you'll be able to hear it in a new way, and you'll be able to apply it in your life. Because it doesn't really matter how much we understand. What matters is that we apply these ideas so that we're able to manifest the joy, manifest the presence of love in the world. Are you with me? Let's manifest love in the world. And the way we do that is in the only way, the Course in Miracles says, and many other technologies says, the only way that we can do that is to be present. This is how the Course says it. This is A Course in Miracles. It is a required course. Only the time you take it is voluntary. Free will does not mean that you can establish the curriculum. It means only that you can elect what you want to take at a given time. The Course does not aim at teaching the meaning of love, for that is beyond what can be taught. It does aim, however, at removing the blocks to the awareness of love's presence, which is your natural inheritance. The opposite of love is fear, but what is all-encompassing can have no opposite. This course can therefore be summed up very simply in this way. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. And herein lies the peace of God. Let that sink in for just a minute. Herein lies the peace of God. What I mean, or what the Course is really speaking about here, is when we remove the blocks to love's awareness, we experience our inheritance as love. Because that's who we are. This moment is another way we experience this moment. We experience the presence of God, might be another way of talking about it. Well, the truth is that where technologies like religion, in these rituals that we perform together as a way of remembering and getting into the present moment and being able to remember stories and ideas. We do that in form. We do that with the rituals that we perform on Sundays, or maybe the rituals we perform at home on our home altars, or prayers, the prayers that we memorize. We use those in order to get into our head and practice the idea so that we are able to be present with our lives. Well, that is a very sort of what I would call one way of doing it, and a religious way. Well, there's also a secular way, the secular way that we talk about that, which is why interfaith is so important to me. In the integral method, and one in which the way I approach the Course in Miracles is that I want to be able to teach and learn these ideas in all four quadrants. The integral has a way of talking about the world in four quadrants. Okay, can you see that? So you've got four ways of being in these four different quadrants that we're talking about. Each of these lessons, each of these episodes offers you a whole lot of information and a whole lot of ideas to apply in your life. Now, the way we remember those, in one way, is to do is those rituals, right, that we talked about, on our altar, or the memorized prayers. Another way that has been proven is that if we could frame those ideas in our head in a way that we can remember them. Okay, so you have an interior way of understanding them, how we think about them, the languaging about them. Well, there's also, in the second quadrant, the way that they feel in the real world. There's the way that they are felt, the way that they actually appear in molecules and streams of data that are very real and very felt, and we can feel how these ideas. What does love feel like? What does guilt feel like? How do we feel when we are in the moment? How does our brain chemistry work, and the whole systems idea work? How does it physically work? That's the second quadrant. The third quadrant is the ways in which we can remember these ideas in the ways that they are implemented in our structures. The structures are the ways, like our laws and the why we drive on one side of the road or this other side of the road, are structures, and the way that the hierarchies of our churches are, the structures of the ways in which our laws are constructed, the way we know how to behave in a group, right? We know what group dynamics is. We know the role of a father, the role of a mother, or even our associations with those ideas. So these ideas in A Course in Miracles, these spiritual truths that have been handed down in the perennial wisdom in every tradition, actually are manifest in the structures that are around us. Our understanding of these laws, these spiritual laws, create the physical laws that we actually live in. Okay, so if we could understand these laws in the way that they impact us in a structural way, might be able to understand the spiritual law a little bit better. But my favorite quadrant is the third quadrant. The third quadrant of these four ideas, you have our mind and our interior, we have our body, which is the exterior, we have the structures that we live in, and we have relationships. Relationships are really where the Course shines. Relationships with our brother, relationships with our families, relationships with ourselves, and relationships with God. Another way we might talk about this is connection. How do you feel connection? How do you structure connection? What ways in which do you have a connection with God in prayer? Those are very real tools. Now, if connection is true, and every one of these systems, whether we're talking about the Advaita systems of the East, whether we're talking about the Buddhist systems, whether we're talking about native traditions, they all basically say the same thing. And they all try to teach these spiritual laws differently, but they teach the same laws, because there is only one law. The Course puts it in this way: truth is true. And because of our upbringing, because of our intellectual understanding and abilities, the structures we live in, and our relationships, and how it feels to be us, we understand and apply these ideas a little bit differently, and are able to hear them a little bit differently. But what is said over and over again is that we are one. We are one. There's one life living and one thing happening. There is only now. There's only us, we. There's only one. So what does that mean? Every system tries to answer that question about how to give you the feeling, how to give you the experience of oneness. But all we can do, all I can do, all your friends and all your connections can do is build the structures for you to experience it. Because all of these methods will tell us that it's a choice that we make. It's a way of understanding and growing into who we are. And that is always, doesn't sound, I don't use that word a lot, but there are some things that are always true. It is always about letting something go. It is never about acquiring something new. Because when we discover what the blocks to love's awareness are, we become available to our inheritance. But our inheritance didn't go anywhere. We did. So that's what A Course in Miracles is really, I think, one of the best ways to speak about a non-dual awareness for a Western mind. So that's why we're here. So the Course tells us exactly how it's to be read. And we're going to go over a little bit about that at this time. It tells us in no uncertain terms what it's for, how we're supposed to use it. So let's take a look at that so that we can make sure that the integrity that we've started on, we're able to continue and maybe let go of some preconceived ideas so that we're able to apply these truths to our lives and increase our experience of oneness, right? Let's see if we can build that container really well. And this is how we are to use the ideas. The overall aim of these exercises and the workbook is to increase our ability to expand the ideas we will be practicing to include everything. This will require no effort on our part. The exercises themselves meet the conditions necessary for this kind of transfer. Some of the ideas the workbook contains we will find hard to believe, and others may seem to be quite startling. This does not matter. We are merely asked to apply the ideas as we are directed to do. We are not asked to judge them at all. We are asked only to use them. It is their use that will give them meaning to us and will show us that they are true. Remember only this: we need not believe the ideas. We need not accept them, and we need not even welcome them. Some of them we may actively resist, but we do not allow ourselves to make exceptions in applying the ideas the workbook contains. And whatever our reactions to the ideas may be, we use them. Nothing more than that is required. So do you see how that involves all of those quadrants that we talked about in the integral side of things? We have an intellectual understanding. We have a physical understanding. We apply it in the structures in our lives to experience the connection that is true. So let's get started. We are looking at chapter 13. If you're on chapter 13 with us, you will find yourself on page 236. I use the combined volume of Course in Miracles. I use the combined volume because this is the one that is most available. Now there are other manifestations of this book. There is the text, which has every single word that Helen Schuckman, who channeled this book from Jesus, with Bill Thetford's notes, and then you have the Sparkle edition that has a different edited version of that text, and then you have the method The book here from the Foundation for Inner Peace is called FIP, the Foundation for Inner Peace, in which Helen, Bill, and others did a group edit with this. So you can use any of those. They all work if you apply the ideas. We're here to apply the ideas, not talk about who says what how, because there's the Hopi elders, there is the Urantia book, there is the teachings of Seth, there's Abraham Hicks. They're all talking about the same thing, and it really doesn't matter how where we hear the ideas. What matters, I think, and what I want to really emphasize here is applying the ideas. Whatever your reactions to the ideas might be, use them. That doesn't just apply to A Course in Miracles. It's great advice no matter what book you're studying, if you're interested in transforming your life. The transformation is available if we build the container for grace to descend. And each one of these systems are about building the container so that you can discover who you are and what it is you're to do here in the world. Each one of them. Here we are. We are looking at chapter 13 that begins on page 236. But before thank you so much. I just remembered there's the other thing that we're doing in this week, or in this class, in this group, and what I do every year, of course, is to do the lessons. Now we're on lesson. This is about 135, so we're 135 days into the year. Not too bad, huh? We are on lesson 135 of 365 lessons. So we're about a third of the way through. We're about a third of the way through the year, right? We're just past March. January, February, March is the first quarter. March, April, May is the second quarter. So we're coming through March, April, May, June. We're in the middle of the second quarter, which, because so 90 days. So we're at 100. We're at 135. We're at 45 days. We're at a month and a half past the first quarter. So we would find ourselves on roughly lesson 135. Some people, believe it or not, I want to mention this, an average. If you're wondering where you fall in the average, if you're doing the lessons, the average, I'm told, person who approaches the Course in Miracles for the first time will take 2 years to do the workbook lessons. That means like a lesson every other day. They're doing the lessons on the average of 2 days. Now that may mean one lesson that you take a week with, and another lesson are the lessons you just go to clip one a day. Well, the first time through the Course in Miracles, most people do it. It takes them 2 years to go through the first lessons. The first time through the lessons usually takes 2 years. But in this class, I'm going to give you the opportunity to do them one a day, because that's the way it's recommended. If you want to keep doing that, that's perfectly fine. But we're going to do them at one a day, and if you do, you'll find yourself at lesson 135. And I want to read this a little bit to us. It's called "If I Defend Myself, I Am Attacked," and it has direct relationship with chapter 13. If I defend myself, I am attacked. Who would defend himself unless he thought he were attacked? That the attack were real, and that his own defenses could save himself. And herein lies the folly of defense. It gives illusions full reality, and then attempts to handle them as real. It adds illusions to illusions, thus making correction doubly difficult. And it is this you do when you attempt to plan the future, activate the past, or organize the present as you wish. Okay? The idea of making decisions about the future based on the past. And living in the past and the present so that we can do that and think about, we take ourselves out of the moment. So in order to order the present moment as we wish. So that's how we set up, that's the container for attack. You operate from the belief. It says you here, so don't be really too much, give that too much weight. It's speaking directly to us from a second person. You operate from the belief you must protect yourself from what is happening, because it must contain what threatens you. A sense of threat is an acknowledgement of an inherent weakness, a belief that there is a danger which has power to call on you to make an appropriate defense. Bum, ba, ba, ba. The world is based on this insane belief. All its structures, remember we talked about structures? All its structures, all its thoughts and doubts, that's the first quadrant, its penalties and heavy armaments, its legal definitions, and its codes, its ethics and its leaders and its gods all serve but to preserve its sense of threat. And that threat is in the second quadrant, to our bodies, right? For no one, in order to legislate relationships. You see, all the quadrants are here. Everything that we're trying to manage here is all together. Okay, it tells us that we try to manage attack in this way. For no one walks the world in armature, but to have terror striking in his heart. Without defenses, you become a light, which heaven gratefully acknowledges to be its own. And it will lead you on in ways appointed for your happiness, according to the ancient plan. Began when time was born. For your followers, so you do know you have followers, right? For your followers will join their light with yours, and it will be increased until the world is lighted up with joy, and gladly will our brothers lay aside their cumbersome defenses, which have availed them nothing, and could only terrify. Cumbersome defenses. Lay down your cumbersome defenses. Aren't all defenses cumbersome? Just an idea there. So we're if you look at the text of chapter 13, it's called The Guiltless World. And we're going to be spending a couple of weeks here because chapter 13 is a large chapter. It's dealing with guilt. So it has 12 sections. We're only going to get through 5 of them in the next half hour. And so let's begin. This is because it's such a large chapter. It actually has an introduction. So if you find an introduction, you know you've probably got a nice big platter of ideas that you're going to be devouring. Okay, so the introduction lays it out for us. If you did not feel guilt, you would not attack, for condemnation is the root of attack. She lays it right out for us. We are talking about attack and how attack destroys our world and the guilt. And that it comes from guilt. It is the judgment. Guilt is the judgment of one mind by another as unworthy of love and deserving of punishment. But herein lies the split, because she calls us, we have a split mind. For the mind that judges perceives itself as separate from the mind being judged, believing that by punishing another, it will escape punishment. All this is but the delusional attempt of the mind to deny itself, right? We're one, to deny itself and escape the penalty of denial. It is not an attempt to relinquish denial, let it go, right? Relinquish denial, but to hold on to it. For it is guilt that has obscured the Father from you, and it is guilt that has driven you insane. I love that. How do you go insane? By cultivating guilt. If this were the real world, God would be cruel. Like, if that's the way the real world worked, God would be cruel. And some people do have a cruel God. It doesn't make it true. If this were the real world, God would be cruel, for no father could subject his children to this as the price of salvation and be loving. Love does not kill to save. Very controversial idea here. Very, very controversial idea. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. That I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time with that idea, but that is exactly what she's talking about. The idea that if somebody gets thrown under the bus, we won't be punished for what we did. It's a very destructive idea, and she sums it up in this way, and I hope I haven't lost you here. Love does not kill to save. If it did, attack would be salvation, and this is the ego's interpretation, not God's. Only the world of guilt would demand this, for only the guilty could conceive of it. Adam's sin, and she loves talking about the Bible, and I do too, because I think it's a wonderful book. Adam's sin could have touched no one had he not believed it was the Father who drove him out of paradise. For in that belief, the acknowledgement of the Father was lost, since only those who did not understand him could believe it. I'm not going to go into all of that theology, because the Course in Miracles makes it very clear about how valuable sacrifice is, and about belief, and about our belief about something does not make it true. But the way we can dispel that in our own minds, the way we can feel that in our own body, is the way we can live in structures that reflect that and have relationships that demonstrate it, is to practice the ideas. Like it said in the very beginning, don't believe them. You don't need to believe these ideas. You might want to practice them, and then you'll prove that they're true. But if you don't practice them, you can't prove that they're true. And it's a felt thing. So I'm offering you a way to feel good. God's will for you is perfect happiness. God's will for you is perfect happiness. So, section 2 is called the guiltless and invulnerability. And you're going to love this. Earlier I said that the Holy Spirit shares the goal of all good teachers, and what's that? Whose ultimate aim is to make themselves unnecessary by teaching their pupils all they know. I want to become unnecessary, and I take that job very, very, very seriously, which is why I'm completely honest and forthright and forward with you the best way I know how to be. The Holy Spirit wants only this: for sharing the Father's love of his Son, he seeks to remove all guilt from his mind, that he may remember his Father in peace. Peace and guilt are antithetical. Peace and guilt are antithetical, and the Father can be remembered only in peace. There's that container. Love and guilt cannot coexist, and to accept one is to deny the other. Guilt hides Christ from your mind, for it is the denial of the blamelessness of the Son of God. It's the denial of your innocence when you deny someone else's innocence, and it hides the Son of God from us. It hides the face of Christ. It hides the truth. It hides the fact that we're all one. It hides our connection. You are invulnerable. There you go. You are invulnerable. You are invulnerable because you're guiltless. You are invulnerable because you are guiltless. You are guiltless. You are guiltless. You can hold on to the past only through guilt. The idea of guilt requires you to hold on to the past. That's what guilt means. For guilt establishes that you will be punished for what you have done, and thus depends on the one-dimensional time proceeding from the past to the future. No one who believes this can understand what always means, what eternity means, and therefore guilt must deprive you of the appreciation of eternity. Eternity being outside of time. You are immortal because you are eternal, and always must be now. Always must be now. Guilt, then, is a way of holding the past and the future in your mind to ensure ego continuity. Ego continuity? I know. Who wants ego continuity? For if what has been will be punished, then the ego's continuity is guaranteed. Yet the guarantee of your continuity is God's. How about that? Not the ego's. And immortality is the opposite of time. I love that. Immortality is the opposite of time, for time passes away while immortality is constant. And where's immortality? Now. What is it always? Now. Where's immortality? Now. Where's always? Now. I love that. You are invulnerable because you are guiltless. You are invulnerable because you are guiltless. You can hold on to the past only through guilt. For guilt establishes that you will be punished for what you have done, right? And thus depends on the one dimension of time proceeding from the past to the future. The ego teaches you to attack yourself because you are guilty, and thus must increase the guilt, for guilt is the result of attack. Guilt is the result of attack, and it requires you to be in the past and try to attack your past, and you in the past. It's ridiculous. In the ego's teaching, then, there is no escape from guilt, for attack makes guilt real, and if it is real, there is no way to overcome it, and then you got to attack somebody for it because you broke God or hurt him. You hurt God's feelings. The Holy Spirit dispels it completely. The Holy Spirit dispels guilt completely and simply through the calm recognition that it has never been. As he looks upon the guiltless Son of God, that would be you, as he looks upon the guiltless child of God, the Holy Spirit knows that this is true, and being true for you, you cannot attack yourself, for without guilt, attack is impossible. You then are saved from God's Son is guiltless. You then are saved because God's Son is guiltless. And being wholly pure, you are invulnerable. You are invulnerable because you're wholly pure. You are wholly pure and guiltless. And he tells you why in the next section. I know your mind is kind of probably jumping ahead. You're examining all those cultural ideas in your head right now. How can this be true of this? And he goes, oh yeah, there's the past. There is a connection there. Just hold all those ideas in your head. I know you might be spinning out a little bit here, but in section 3, it tells you a little bit more about how to ease into this idea of invulnerability. And it says, the ultimate purpose of projection is a way to get rid of guilt. So there it brings it into what we do in our minds to try to hurt other people's bodies. So they'll perform in the structures that we want, and the rules that we've set up, so we can have a greater connection with them. Do you see how this all goes in a circle over and over and over again? And we use projection in order to do this. Projection and attack. You getting that? Projection and attack. The ultimate goal, ultimate purpose of projection is always to get rid of guilt. Yet, characteristically, the ego attempts to get rid of guilt from its viewpoint only. For much as the ego wants to retain guilt, you find it intolerable. We do, since guilt stands in the way of your remembering God, whose pull is so strong that you cannot resist it. And I would call God your attraction to the moment. On this issue, then, the deepest split of all occurs, for if you are to retain guilt, as the egos insist, you cannot be you. Like you're wrong if you're not guilty. Have you ever heard that? Only by persuading you that it is you, the ego's doing this, could the ego possibly induce you to project guilt and thereby keep it in your mind, right? We learned earlier that sharing is the only way to preserve anything. So if you want to experience love, you share love. And we are only ever teaching what we believe. So if you believe guilt is valuable, you're sharing it all the time and trying to give it away to others. Yet consider how strange a solution the ego's arrangement is. It's very strange. You project guilt to get rid of it, but you're actually merely concealing it, right? That's what projection is. You do experience the guilt, but you just have no idea why. On the contrary, you associate it with the weird assortment of ego ideals, and he uses it in quotes, ego ideals, which the ego claims that you have failed. You have failed to live up to my expectations. Do you see yourself in this? I know I see myself in this. On the contrary, you associate it with the weird assortment of ego ideals, which the ego claims that you have failed. And yet you have no idea that you are failing as the Son of God by seeing him as guilty. Believing you are no longer you do not realize that you are failing yourself. This course has explicitly stated that its goal for you is happiness and peace. Do you know that? Do you believe that? Do you know that I want happiness and peace for you? May happiness and peace follow you wherever you go and whatever you do. May your mind be always happy and at peace. This course has explicitly stated that its goal for you is happiness and peace. Yet you're afraid of it. You've been told again and again that it will set you free, yet you sometimes react as if it's trying to imprison you. Imprisoning is one of a constant repeating metaphor in A Course in Miracles, the idea of how we imprison ourselves. You often dismiss this course more readily than you dismiss the ego's thought system, like the culture that we live in. The course has to be wrong, not the entire culture. Well, that's because we don't practice the course, but we do practice the culture. To some extent, then, you must believe that by not learning the course, you are protecting yourself. And if you do not realize that, it is only your guiltlessness that can protect you. Yay! In the extreme, you are afraid of redemption, and you believe it will kill you. I know I used to. It's a very extreme way of talking about it, but I used to think that if I answered the call of the Holy Spirit, that I would have to shave my head and wear orange and learn another language, and that I wouldn't be able to have any more sex, and there would be no more fun in my life ever again. I would never have any fun, and I'd have to just sit alone and be spiritual. It's not true. If you're interested in who you are, you will listen to the voice that likes you. You will listen to the Holy Spirit inside your head. Listen to the oneness bringing you into this moment so you can experience what? Peace and happiness. God's will for you is peace and happiness. Okay. In the extreme, you are afraid of redemption because you believe it will kill you. Make no mistake about the depth of this fear. It's deep, and we experience it again and again and again when we do not act on our own good. Self-love and self-love is a very powerful way of waking up. For you believe that in the presence of truth, you might turn on yourself and destroy yourself. Little child, it says, little child, this is not so. Your guilty secret, here it is, your guilty secret is nothing. Your guilty secret is nothing. And if you will but bring it to the light will dispel it. Bring it to the light. Bring your guilty little feelings to the light. Your guilty feelings to the light. Really important concept there she has for us. The section 3 is the guiltless Son of God. So why are you guiltless? Because you're innocent. Why wouldn't you believe that you're innocent? Because you're living in the past where you are remembering ways in which you stepped outside of your own integrity. And we relive those ideas over and over and over again. But we blame other people and want to punish somebody else for our own actions that were out of integrity. By making somebody else to blame. So we look for a way out of feeling so bad. So we think that if we can make somebody else pay for it, then we'll feel better. Instead of uprooting the ideas of guilt and deciding that we are deeply loved, that we made a mistake because we weren't acting like ourselves. And when we give ourselves permission to be ourselves, these loving, glorious, magnificent, happy, and peaceful beings, we're actually giving other people the ability to do that as well. But she says over and over again in these first 3 sections that the only way to do that is to be in the always, in the always, in the now, in the present, where we acknowledge our attraction to the truth, where we acknowledge our attraction to God, that we don't have an attraction to sacrifice, that we don't have an attraction to cutting each other off. We have an attraction to oneness. And that is our true nature. So that's kind of where we find ourselves in the last couple of minutes here. The introduction tells us that guilt can't be real, and that we can't sacrifice the way out of it. If we could, and that was real, we would have a pretty cruel God, and that we are invulnerable because we're guiltless, and that's actually not true, and that it requires we're not in time, we're not actually in time, we're actually only ever in the present, which is eternal. So we can identify ourselves as present, as in the present moment. Guilt becomes unavailable to us, and we don't throw it around on other people through projection. And realizing that we live in a culture and structures that support guilt, we could be offering redemption being the knowledge of who we are. So section 4 and section 5 is the last two sections, and they're wallops. That's why I went over a little bit here. And this is one of those controversial ideas in Course in Miracles. The first, of course, is that love does not kill to save. The idea of sacrifice there. God does not kill to save. God doesn't kill anything so that something else could be saved. That's what I would call Bronze Age theology, or even maybe Stone Age theology. It's a Bronze Age remembering of a Stone Age idea, I think. What I would say. But there's another really very kind of meaty idea here. It's called the fear of redemption. Wanted to preface that all before we got to section 4. It's called the fear of redemption. Suspend yourself a little bit here and listen. You may wonder why it's so crucial that you look upon your hatred and realize its full extent. You may also think that it would be easy enough for the Holy Spirit to show it to you and to dispel it without the need for you to raise it to your awareness yourself. Yet, there is one more obstacle you have interposed between yourself and the atonement. We have said that no one would countenance fear if he recognized it. Yet, in your disordered state of mind, you are not afraid of fear. You do not like it, but it's not your desire to attack that really frightens you. You're not seriously disturbed by your hostility. You keep it hidden because you are more afraid of what it covers. You could look upon the ego's darkest cornerstone without fear. If you did not believe that without the ego, you would find within yourself something you fear even more. You're not really afraid of crucifixion. Your real terror is redemption. Very controversial idea here. Hope you're still with me. You are not afraid of crucifixion. You're not afraid that being and doing what God has for you in the world is going to get you killed. You're not afraid of that. You might be a little bit afraid of it, but that's only the way we identify ourselves as the ego. The real fear is that of experiencing your true nature. It's been true for me. In honesty, it's not Is it not harder for you to say, I love, than I hate? You associate love with weakness, it says here, and hatred with strength. And your own real power seems to you as your real weakness. For you could not control your joyous response to the call of love if you heard it, and the whole world you thought you made will vanish. The Holy Spirit then seems to be attacking your fortress. I would call it your fortress of hate. For you would shut out all of God, and he does not will to be excluded. Too bad. The deeper you go into the blackness of the ego's foundation, the closer you come to the love that is hidden there, and it is this that frightens you. Whew. Pretty important stuff there. The deeper you go into the blackness of the ego's foundation, the deeper you go into the ego's black foundations, the closer you come to the love that is hidden there. Who hid it? We did. How much easier it is to say, I hate this, than it is to say, I love you. I love you. I don't like what you're doing, but I love you. We're in this together. Rather than, you need to make it up to me in some way. It's a very important concept she has here for us. Very, it's kind of huge, I would say. It is one way in which we lose people in the Course in Miracles because of this very idea that love does not kill to save. And the idea to kill to save is the way we know that guilt is acting upon our lives, and why we don't believe that redemption actually has very much power. That redemption is elusive, and that hate and control are powerful. The ways in which we beat ourselves up from the past, or maybe we're beating up somebody else's past. And when we do that, we leave the present moment. When we do that, we are leaving now and always in our identity with love and peace and beauty and knowledge and joy. We leave our identity in the present moment, and we go chasing after an idealized ego, right? That's a wonderful concept I'd like us to understand in this section. An idealized ego. We have this way that the ego says we're supposed to be, and when we don't live up to it, we feel guilt and shame. And maybe when somebody else doesn't live up to the idealized ego that we have for them, we demand sacrifice and punishment. Can we look at the ways in which we set up structures and relationships and self-talk in order to fail, in order to feel guilty, in order to not love, and we hold out and create an identity around an idealized ego, instead of experiencing our power by being fully present, even to our hatred, what it says here, even to our deep sense of anger and betrayal, the ways in which we want to hurt other people, the ways in which we want to hurt ourselves. We have this idea often that if we hurt ourselves, that we don't give other people the opportunity to hurt us, that other people won't hurt us if we put ourselves down first. It's even, a virtue. Some people think that that's humility. The Course is offering us another way. The Course is offering us a way to look deep inside and actually look at the darkness that we see there. And what we'll find is love instead. But we have to look. Requires us to look. We're in the last 10 minutes. I hope you've managed to stick with me. This idea of guilt is a huge one. We live in a guiltless world. The reality is a guiltless world. You're invulnerable. Who you are as this connection that we have, is invulnerable. Being guilty requires that we drag up something from the past in order to change the future. That doesn't work. What works is uncovering the ways in which we are afraid to be present. Guilt allows us, examining our own guilt, examining the dark foundations of the ways in which we hurt ourselves and hurt others. The result is that we are able to be present. And that's actually the last section. It's called, the last section we're going to do today, it's in section 5. It's called the function of time. The first half of this chapter is about ways in which we use time in order to not be here. But this is what it says the function of time really is. Are you ready? And now the reason why you are afraid of this course should be apparent. For this is a course on love because it's about you. You've been told that your function in this world is healing, and your function in heaven is creating. The ego teaches that your function on earth is destruction, and you have no function at all in heaven. It would thus destroy you here and bury you here, leaving you no inheritance except the dust out of which you were made. As long as it reasonably satisfied with you, as long as the ego is reasonably satisfied with you, as its reasoning goes, it offers you oblivion. When it becomes overtly savage, it offers you only hell. So the ego promises you, if you'll do and act the way the culture wants us to do, it promises that you won't feel anything at the best. You'll stop feeling whatever it is you're feeling. Or if you don't, it will offers you torture. I'll torture you forever. So realize that. This is a course in love because it's about you. One of the two open secrets of A Course in Miracles. The first open secret is that you wrote it, and because we're all one, right? You wrote it. And the second open secret of A Course in Miracles is that your body is everything that has form. Okay? Everything that has form is your body. The body of the child of God. It is evident that the Holy Spirit's perception of time is the exact opposite of the ego's. The reason is equally clear, for they perceive the goal of time as diametrically opposed. Diametrically means dimensionally opposed, as if not occupying the same space. The Holy Spirit interprets time's purpose as rendering the need for time unnecessary. Oh. So the need for time unnecessary. The need for time unnecessary would be about your taking up your space in the mind of God in the present moment. The need for time is unnecessary. Okay, so the Holy Spirit interprets time as unnecessary. To bring us to an understanding that time isn't necessary. The Holy Spirit's purpose for time is to show us that it's not necessary. Why is it not necessary? Because you have the ability to be naturally present. It's who you are. It's what we are. It's how we do. You know, as the children say, that's just how we roll. The Holy Spirit regards the function of time as temporary, serving only his teaching function. right? We're being taught, which is temporary by definition. Remember that first thing that we did? What's a good teacher? A good teacher is one that will teach you everything she knows so that you don't need her anymore. His teaching function, which is temporary by definition, his emphasis is therefore on the only aspect of time that can be extended to the infinite. For now is the closest approximation of eternity that this world offers. It is the reality of now. Without past and without future, that the beginning of the appreciation of eternity lies. For only now is here, and only now represents the opportunities for the holy encounters in which salvation can be found. A holy encounter is what the Course calls meeting a brother, is experiencing that connection. We are mostly relationship. That's why being in love is so intoxicating, because you really experience more of yourself when you're with people that you love and when you're being loved. That connection is really strong and powerful. And we actually experience that second quadrant, experience ourselves in a greater way when we are in love, whether it's in love with the family or in love with our puppies, or we're in nature, we're in love. We experience ourselves to a greater degree inside connection. That's what it means. That's what we are one means to me today. Only now is here, and only now is present, and only now gives us the opportunity to experience holy encounters like this one we're having now. I have a holy encounter with you because I'm experiencing this greater connection of who I am, where I am, what I do, where I go, and how I experience and expand the love of God in my life today. I know that you are here for a purpose. And I know that I'm here for a purpose. It is to be myself. It is to be present with all that is. It is to let go of guilt. Let go of this obsession with the past. Let go of my ability, my notion that I can change the future by re-experiencing the past. It's not correct. The future will never be. The past is gone. We're only ever going to be here now. And we are either only ever going to be in one constant holy encounter with the world, experiencing the world as a holy encounter, or we're going to be examining the past for the mistakes that we made so that we don't commit them in the future. We could learn to be present, where the Course in Miracles offers this. We could use these tools of understanding how the world works, how our minds work, how the egos work, in order to not be fooled, not be tempted to get out of this moment where it all happens. My name is Glen Morton-Ganaway. I'm an integral mentor, and I am an interfaith reverend. I would love to hear from you at gmganaway@gmail.com. You can visit me on the web at glenganaway.com, glenganaway.com, or themightycompanions.com. thank you for spending your Saturday evening with me, or your Saturday afternoon if you're on this side of the pond. You are dearly loved.